My name is Sophia, and if you had met me just a few years ago, you would have seen nothing but the picture of a happy young woman surrounded by the warmth of a loving family. At least that's what I believed with every piece of my heart. I grew up in a household where laughter echoed through the walls, where every holiday was marked with warmth and tradition, and where I was told over and over again that family meant everything. I thought I was safe in their love, safe in their loyalty, safe in their embrace. But if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this. The people who smile at you the brightest can sometimes be hiding the darkest shadows. For the longest time, I carried this unshakable faith that no matter how cruel the world outside became, my family would always remain my anchor, my safe harbor in the storm. Yet as I stand here today, telling you this story, I can promise you one thing. Nothing is more dangerous than blindly trusting those closest to you. Because sometimes your blood betrays you deeper than any stranger ever could. The secret I uncovered didn't just change how I saw my parents, my siblings, or my family name. It shattered the very foundation of my identity. What I found was not just a hidden truth. It was a carefully buried deception that had been waiting, silently, for the right moment to destroy me. And in that moment, when the truth finally clawed its way into the light, I realized something chilling. Love had never been the foundation of my family. Greed was, and my revenge would become their justice. To anyone on the outside, my family looked like the perfect portrait you might see in a glossy magazine or in the polished frames that sit neatly on a mantelpiece. We lived in a spacious house with a neatly trimmed lawn, the kind of home people often admired as they passed by. On Sundays, we had dinners together where laughter filled the air, and where my parents would hold hands as though they were still deeply in love after decades of marriage. My siblings and I posed for photographs during holidays, our smiles wide and genuine, or at least they appeared that way. I grew up hearing the words, "Family comes first," repeated like a sacred mantra. Birthdays were celebrated with enthusiasm, Christmas mornings were dazzling with carefully wrapped gifts, and summer vacations were filled with trips that left behind albums of memories. For years, I never once questioned the sincerity of their love. I believed in their warmth, in their loyalty, and in the unshakable bond of blood. Looking back now, I realize how masterfully they painted that illusion. The happy family image wasn't just for outsiders. It was a performance they played so well that even I, their own daughter, believed it without hesitation. But no matter how carefully someone hides the cracks, the mask always begins to slip. And for me, the first cracks appeared long before I was ready to see them. At first, the changes were so small that I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. My parents, who had always listened with genuine interest when I spoke about my dreams or my struggles, suddenly seemed distracted. Their smiles remained, but they no longer reached their eyes. My father would nod absent-mindedly as though his mind was elsewhere, and my mother, who once asked endless questions about my life, began to change the subject whenever I spoke too much about myself. Even with my siblings, the warmth that had always defined our relationship seemed to cool. My older brother, who once teased me with affection and protected me fiercely, started treating me like an inconvenience, as if my presence in the room irritated him. My sister, who used to whisper secrets with me late into the night, now kept her distance, her laughter turning into quick glances exchanged with our parents whenever I walked in. It was not just in words, but in silences. Long, uncomfortable silences that settled at the dinner table when I entered the room. At times, I would catch them lowering their voices when I walked in, as if I had interrupted a conversation I was never supposed to hear. I remember lying in bed at night, my heart restless, asking myself questions I couldn't answer. Had I done something wrong? Was I no longer worthy of their love? The fear that maybe I was the problem gnawed at me. Yet, deep inside, a whisper told me this was not my imagination. Something was shifting. Something was breaking. And I was standing in the middle of it, blind to the truth that was about to unravel. The days turned into weeks, and the feeling of separation grew heavier, like an invisible wall rising higher between me and the rest of my family. What once felt like a home now began to resemble a house filled with strangers. The familiar warmth that had always wrapped around me whenever I stepped through the front door seemed to vanish, replaced by a coldness I couldn't explain. Conversations became shorter. If I asked about their day, their answers were vague, clipped, and dismissive. My presence no longer invited questions or smiles, but instead felt like an interruption. Meals, which had once been the highlight of our evenings, turned into quiet affairs where forks scraped against plates and glances were exchanged over my head, as if decisions were being made in silent agreement without my knowledge. It was in the smallest moments that I felt the deepest sting. My mother locking away documents when I entered her room. My father hanging up phone calls abruptly when I walked in. My siblings whispering together and scattering as soon as I appeared. I tried to convince myself it was stress, that life was pulling us in different directions, but deep inside I knew there was something deliberate about their distance. The more I tried to reach out, the further they pulled away. It was as though they were slowly erasing me from the center of their lives, shifting me to the margins without ever saying a word. And though my heart ached for their affection, I couldn't escape the growing dread that I was being shut out of something much larger than I could yet understand. One rainy evening, Sophia returned home earlier than expected from college. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that carried weight, as though the walls themselves were holding secrets. She moved cautiously through the hallways until she heard faint murmurs coming from her father's study, a place that was almost always locked. The door was slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at her, and she leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. Inside, she saw her father hunched over a stack of papers with her mother at his side. Her siblings stood nearby, their faces pale but strangely determined. Spread across the desk were bank statements, property deeds, and documents filled with her name, highlighted in bold ink. Sophia's heart pounded. She caught words that chilled her. Inheritance. Transfer. Keep it hidden. She must not know. Each phrase twisted like a knife in her chest. The realization struck her. They weren't just avoiding her. They were actively plotting something that revolved around her. Her mother's voice, usually tender and soothing, was now sharp and calculating. If she finds out, everything we've built will fall apart. We can't let her stand in the way. Sophia's knees nearly gave out. She stumbled back, her breath catching as the enormity of their betrayal washed over her. These weren't strangers conspiring against her. They were her own blood, the very people she had trusted with her heart. At that moment, the puzzle pieces of their cold behavior locked into place. Their distance wasn't. The weight of what Sophia had overheard was unbearable. She could no longer sit silently, pretending everything was normal. That same night, when the entire family gathered for dinner, Sophia's hands trembled as she set her glass down. The clinking sound drew every eye toward her. Her father looked up, stern and expectant. Her mother's smile was thin, forced, and her siblings avoided her gaze. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Finally, Sophia found her voice. Low, but unshakable. "I know," she whispered, her words slicing through the quiet like a blade. "I know about the inheritance. I know about the lies." The room froze. Her father's fork slipped from his hand, clattering loudly against the plate. Her mother's face drained of color. Her brother muttered something under his breath, but Sophia raised her voice before he could speak. "All this time I thought you were pulling away because of stress or some family problem. But it was all about money, wasn't it? My future, my life. Something you decided to steal from me." Her father slammed his hand against the table, trying to regain control. "You don't understand what's at stake, Sophia. This family needs security, and you—" "Security?" She cut him off, her voice trembling with both fury and heartbreak. "You call betraying your own daughter security?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Every word felt like fire spilling from her chest, each syllable a mix of rage and disbelief. Her mother finally broke the silence, her tone icy. "Sophia, you were never supposed to find out." The confession confirmed everything. Their betrayal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, cold, and calculated. After that night, Sophia could no longer look at her family the same way. Every smile, every kind word, every casual gesture now felt poisoned with deceit. She started piecing together moments from the past that she had once brushed off as ordinary. Suddenly, they all made sense. the whispered phone calls late at night, the way her parents exchanged uneasy glances whenever money was mentioned, her brother's sudden trips under the excuse of business. They weren't coincidences. They were part of the carefully crafted deception, and Sophia had been blind to it all. Digging deeper, she found bank statements left carelessly in her father's study. Accounts that Sophia's name should have been attached to, drained clean and rerouted elsewhere. The inheritance her late grandmother had promised her, a gift meant to secure her dreams, had been manipulated, siphoned and hidden right under her nose. Every page she uncovered made her chest tighten, her hands shake. Her family had not only betrayed her trust, but had also stripped away her independence, her ability to shape her own life. When she confronted her mother again, this time in private, she asked one simple question. Why me? Why would you take from your own daughter? Her mother's expression was unreadable, a mixture of pity and cruelty. Because you were too naive to stop us, and because we needed it more than you ever would. That sentence broke something inside Sophia. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity, self-worth, and the devastating realization that the people she trusted most saw her as nothing but a resource to exploit. The lies were no longer just secrets. They were a weapon, and Sophia was the target. Sophia didn't scream. She didn't throw things or collapse in tears like her family expected her to. Instead, she grew quiet, and that silence frightened them more than any outburst could have. Behind her calm face, a storm was brewing. For days, she moved through the house like a shadow, polite, distant, and detached. She no longer asked questions, no longer searched for explanations. She simply observed. Every move her family made, every secretive conversation, every attempt to cover their tracks. She took it all in. Her nights were spent journaling and planning. In those quiet hours, Sophia transformed from the naive girl her mother had called too easy to deceive into something far more dangerous. A woman who knew the value of patience. Revenge, she realized, was not something to be rushed. It was something to be crafted with precision. She studied finance, inheritance laws, and legal loopholes late into the night. She contacted trusted advisors her family didn't know about, slowly building a network of people who could help her when the time was right. Every detail she learned became a brick in the foundation of her future retaliation. Outwardly, she played her role well. At dinner, she smiled faintly. With her parents, she kept her tone respectful. With her brother, she pretended nothing had changed. They thought she had accepted her fate, that their secret was buried under her silence. But deep inside, Sophia was sharpening her resolve like a blade. She knew that when her moment came, it wouldn't just be about reclaiming what was stolen from her. It would be about teaching them a lesson so devastating that they would regret ever underestimating her. Sophia was no longer the daughter who blindly trusted her family. She was becoming their reckoning. The moment Sophia had been waiting for arrived unexpectedly. One rainy afternoon, while her father was away on yet another business meeting, a courier arrived at the door with a thick envelope. Her mother rushed to snatch it, but Sophia intercepted it first. Inside were legal documents, amendments to the will and property transfers. Her family was in the final stages of erasing her completely from the inheritance. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would have been cut out of her grandmother's legacy forever, with no proof to fight back. Her hands trembled as she held the papers, but her mind was sharp, clear. This was the proof she needed, the weapon that could turn everything around. Quietly, she made copies and returned the originals before her mother noticed. That night, Sophia sat in her room, the copies spread out on her desk like puzzle pieces. For the first time, she felt the power shifting. The betrayal had once left her powerless, but now the evidence was in her hands. She realized her family wasn't as untouchable as they believed. Their greed had left cracks in their carefully built facade, and Sophia had just found her way in. She didn't confront them right away. Instead, she reached out to a lawyer she had secretly contacted weeks earlier. The lawyer, skeptical at first, grew increasingly alarmed as Sophia presented the documents. "If this is true," he said gravely, Your family has committed serious fraud. You have every right to fight back." That sentence was the spark Sophia needed. No longer was she merely reacting to betrayal. She was now moving with purpose, armed with truth and strategy. The turning point had come, and Sophia was ready to turn her pain into their downfall. Sophia knew revenge couldn't be rushed. Every step had to be carefully measured, every move calculated to strike at the heart of her family's deceit. With the lawyer's guidance, she began constructing her plan like an architect building a fortress. Strong, impenetrable, and impossible to ignore. Her first move was silence. She pretended to go back to her routine, giving her family no reason to suspect that she had uncovered more than they intended. At dinners, she smiled faintly, offering polite responses while hiding the fire that burned inside her. To them, she looked broken, defeated, exactly what they wanted. But behind closed doors, Sophia was gathering strength. She opened a private bank account in her own name, one her family could never access. She carefully redirected small assets and resources that her grandmother had once entrusted to her. Piece by piece, she rebuilt her foundation. Next, she used the documents she had copied to create a timeline of every fraudulent move her family had made. Each falsified signature, each manipulated transfer, each hidden transaction. She cataloged it all. Her lawyer marveled at her thoroughness. "You're not just fighting back, Sophia," he told her. "You're building a case they can't escape from." But Sophia wanted more than legal justice. She wanted them to feel what she had felt: humiliation, fear, betrayal. So she crafted a plan not only to expose their crimes in court, but also to shatter their reputation in the community. She contacted journalists discreetly, leaving anonymous tips about suspicious dealings. She even reached out to her father's business rivals, ensuring that when the truth came out, the fallout would be public and merciless. Sophia's family believed they still held all the power, but in reality, the clock was ticking down to their destruction, and every second was in her control. The day of reckoning arrived like a storm Sophia had quietly summoned. Court papers were filed, evidence was presented, and whispers spread through the community faster than wildfire. Her family, once respected and admired, suddenly found themselves under the harsh glare of suspicion. The courtroom was packed. Sophia sat at the front, her posture steady, her lawyer by her side. Across the room, her parents and brother avoided her gaze, their once confident expressions now pale with dread. For the first time, they were the ones trapped, not her. The evidence was damning. Copies of altered documents, bank transfers, signatures forged to erase Sophia from her grandmother's will, all laid out in meticulous detail. The judge's eyes grew colder with each revelation, and the murmurs from the audience filled the air like distant thunder. When the moment came for Sophia to speak, she rose slowly, her voice calm but heavy with emotion. "I thought my family loved me," she began, her words echoing in the silent room. But instead, they chose greed over loyalty, betrayal over love. They tried to steal not only my future, but also my trust, my faith in the people who were supposed to protect me. Her mother broke down, tears streaming, while her father clenched his jaw in silence. Her brother muttered excuses, but no one was listening. The weight of the truth was undeniable. The ruling was swift and unforgiving. Sophia's inheritance was restored, and her family was charged with fraud. Their reputation, carefully built over decades, crumbled in a matter of hours. Neighbors whispered, former friends distanced themselves, and the once proud family name became synonymous with scandal. As the gavel struck, Sophia felt a strange calm wash over her. Justice had been served, not just in law, but in life. When the dust finally settled, Sophia walked out of the courthouse into the crisp evening air. For the first time in months, she felt the heavy weight on her chest begin to lift. The world outside looked the same busy streets, the same fading sunlight. But for Sophia, everything had changed. She was no longer the girl who blindly trusted her family. She was no longer the daughter betrayed and silenced. She was stronger now, forged by pain, sharpened by betrayal, and reborn through justice. With her inheritance restored, Sophia chose not to retreat into bitterness. Instead, she invested in herself, pursuing the dreams her grandmother had always wanted for her. She traveled, studied, and built a life defined not by the scars of betrayal, but by the resilience she had discovered within herself. Her family, meanwhile, lived in the ruins of their choices. Stripped of their reputation, burdened by legal consequences, they became shadows of their former selves. Sophia didn't gloat, nor did she seek to watch them suffer further. Their downfall was simply the echo of their own actions. One evening, as Sophia sat by her window overlooking the city lights, she realized something profound. Revenge hadn't destroyed her, it had freed her. Justice wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully hers and finding the courage to stand tall when others tried to break her. Her story was no longer one of betrayal. It was one of triumph, and with every step forward, Sophia carried the quiet strength of a woman who had faced her darkest moment and turned it into her greatest victory. If Sophia's journey moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. More gripping revenge stories are coming your way, stories of betrayal, justice, and the strength to rise again.